I came back from service to find out that my wife had cheated on me with her neighbor, so I divorced her and made her partner pay. As I approached our front door, I took a few deep breaths and searched around in my pocket for the key to our home. I went inside as the door swung open, my excitement growing with each passing instant as the anticipation mounted. A haunting silence pervaded the home, and there was a palpable sense that nothing was there. I called out her name as I made my way carefully through the rooms that were known to me, but there was no response. As I climbed the stairs in the direction of our bedroom where I hoped to find her, my pulse pounded. I pushed the door open and got ready to yell surprise. As soon as I saw who it was, I went completely still out of shock. There, in front of me, stood not only my wife, but also a sight that made me incapable of uttering a word. There were balloons and confetti all around her, in addition to a giant banner that read, "Congratulations, it's a girl." She was cradling a teeny, adorable infant that was wrapped in a soft, pink blanket in her arms. My feelings swirled around in my head like a tornado. After being away for about a year due to military service, I was suddenly confronted with the humbling realization that I had become a parent during my absence. My eyes started to well up with tears as I attempted to make sense of the tremendous surprise that was in front of me. The expression on my wife's face changed from one of surprise to one of uncertainty, and finally to one of terror as she gazed at me. It was almost as if she had seen a ghost standing in front of her at that same moment. I could feel the anxiety that was flowing from her, and as a result my mind began to race with a number of different questions. I hesitated for a moment before extending my arms to hug her, my gaze flitting between her and the adorable bundle that she was holding in her arms. I took a deep breath, tried to slow down the pounding of my heart, and worked up the courage to ask the question that was all of a sudden of the utmost importance. Wait a minute, what the heck just took place? My voice was filled with a mixture of confusion and concern, and I found it difficult to speak clearly. It was difficult for me to comprehend what I was seeing. My wife's eyes began to bubble up with tears as she gathered the strength to speak, and her voice was shaking as she spoke. Her words were hardly audible as she uttered them in a hushed whisper. "I found out I was pregnant shortly after you left," she said. "It was completely out of the blue, but I waited until you got back before I told you about it." A storm of feelings swept over me at that moment. Disbelief, remorse, and even a little bit of rage were all mixed together in her mind at the same time. While I was away and unable to be there for my wife during her pregnancy, I found it difficult to wrap my head around the idea that I would soon become a parent. It was a blend of unfathomable happiness and profound melancholy, all of which became wrapped up inside of me like a knotted mess. My throat was dry as I tried to choke out the words "I'm sorry," but I managed to get them out. I had no idea that something like this would take place while I was gone. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be there for you. I told her that we just talked about it a week ago and that we'd been in contact for the entire year. How could you keep this a secret from me? And how could you treat me like this? I've done all in my power to keep in touch for as long as I can, and I've never taken you for granted. During the previous 5 minutes, she must have repeated the word sorry 1,000 times. I informed her that I did not require an apology from her, but that I did need to know the reason why she had been fooling around while I was gone. I was unable to comprehend why on earth she would do such a thing. I screamed at the top of my lungs and asked her, what had you planned for the following month, which is when you were anticipating my arrival? Were you going to make an effort to conceal your disloyalty? She startled, took a few steps back, and started shaking in response to my fury. Nonetheless, she did not answer any of my questions. Before I could yell any louder, her phone began to ring, and when I looked at it, I saw that her neighbor's name was displayed on the screen. I assumed that, because I was shouting, he was becoming concerned because everyone knew I was away and my wife was alone. So he called to see if there was anything wrong. I accepted the call to tell him that everything was fine. But before I could say anything, he said, "Baby, I can't wait to see our child." And I know it wasn't fair to leave you at the last moment like that, but I had no choice but to rush out as my sister's son fell from the stairs and my brother-in-law is out of the country, But my mother told me that the baby girl is just like you, babe, and I was wondering, what about the name Precious? When he realized there was no reaction from the other side, he said warily, "Darling, are you okay? Why are you being silent?" "Because your darling soldier husband has returned," I raged. "Don't you dare touch her and my baby girl." "I am," he yelled. I didn't bother listening to him any further, so I dropped the line. At first she lied to me, and then when I got there, she tried to cover up her treachery with my name, and then cherry on top, I found out who my wife was having an affair with. She had been deceiving me the whole time. Possibly, whatever it is that I've done, I wouldn't have done it if she hadn't tried to trick me. However, when a long list of things happened to me in the blink of an eye, I lost my temper and did something that I could never in a million years have imagined myself doing. I politely requested that she keep the baby away, but when she didn't, I took the baby and kept her out of the way, and then I grabbed my cheating wife and tossed her on the bed. She started crying at me, no, 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 but I was so enraged that I was relishing her cries and begging not to hurt her. After a few minutes of her slow sobbing, the door started banging from outside and started giving me threats and warnings, but I did what I wanted in wrath and climbed out of my bed, fitting myself into underpants. Then I opened the door when my dumb neighbor saw my wife crying in bed with no clothes on, and I was only wearing my underwear. He tried to grasp me, but I stopped him and shoved him away and said, "Get the hell out of my house." He pulled me aside, barged into the room, covered my wife, took up his daughter, and glared at me. He threatened to file a complaint against me and send me to jail, so I kept my cool and reminded him that in this house he was the other person, and he has a lot more chances of serving time in jail for adultery, breaking in, and other offenses, so calling the cops is pointless. I was about to leave the room when I turned around and told him to leave because I was going to divorce that biatch. My cheating wife questioned me about why I forced myself on her if I planned to divorce her. I told them both that I wanted him to experience what I felt when I saw his daughter in my wife's arms and heard him call my wife darling. And every time he touches you, he will remember this day, and your cries will haunt him for the rest of his life. I put my faith in you, and you not only betrayed that faith, but also tried to trick me. If you had simply told me over the phone that everything that had been going on between us was over, I would have parted ways with you in a dignified manner. However, because you went down the wrong path, I had to go down the same path in order to make you both see what you had done to me. After that, I kicked them out of my home and my life, and after a week I served my wife with divorce papers. I did not accuse her of adultery, and our assets were split evenly between the two of us. Additionally, they did not file any allegations of violence against me. It has been 2 years since I divorced my unfaithful wife, and I haven't moved houses or cities. Instead, I have stayed in the same house directly next to them, so that any time they see my face, they will remember that terrible day when I exacted my vengeance. But now, after 2 years, I've decided to relocate to a new home since I'm ready to move on from this phase of my life.